coming out to support your local independent bookstore. Be sure to grab an events calendar on the way out because we have a fantastic upcoming lineup including Sue Miller, Brady Udall, Anne Brayshairs, and many more. Tickets for Jenna Blum's May 27th reading, Lee Child's June 3rd reading, and Alan First's June 30th reading, all at the Coolidge Corner Theater, are now available at the register upstairs for $5. To stay up to date, I encourage you to join our weekly email list, BMail, become a fan of us on Facebook, and follow us on Twitter. We are honored to have Brunonia Barry here tonight. Her first novel, The Lace Reader, was widely praised, and among the many awards she won, she became the first American writer to win the Bacante Award for Best Women's Fiction. The Lace Reader was a New York Times bestseller, and it has been published in 30 countries. The Toronto Globe and Mail said of her work with The Lace Reader, Brunonia Barry can write. Boy, can she write. In this, her second novel, The Map of True Places, that is certainly evident. It follows Bostonian psychotherapist Steve Finch, whose life had fallen into place love-wise or career-wise after a rebellious Salem childhood. Then things were thrown asunder after, in one of the worst possible ways, she learned of the suicide of a patient who was very much like her own belated mother. The suicide shocks her into rewriting her life's course. She returns to her hometown Salem and her ailing Hawthorne scholar father Finch. Along the way, secrets unravel. The story, with its rich character work, is an utterly compelling study in identity and perception. Brunonia Barry lives in Salem with her husband and her golden retriever Byzantium. As a North Shore native, I am very proud. Please join me in welcoming Brunonia Barry.
Thank you, Katie. It's great to be here. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
I'm going to start by telling you a little more about the story, and then I'll do 3 readings and tell you more in between. And then we'll have some questions and answers at the end. For those of you who don't know me, I was born in Salem, Massachusetts, and grew up in Marblehead, rivaling towns that share a harbor. And my dad, I was born in Salem Hospital, but being a 7th generation Marbleheader, he immediately had my birth certificate changed to Marblehead. And I always tell people now, he died, but now I'm telling people about this because I think he'd be arrested if he were alive, but he got it done. So I am a Marbleheader. And I grew up there and stayed until I was 18, went to college in Vermont and New Hampshire, and then got a job doing public relations work, which took me to Chicago, where I ended up working for a company that handled Second City and the Ivanhoe Theaters, as well as the Studebaker Theater, which is the one I went out there to work with. After that, I went to New York City thinking, I've been in public relations. I'm going to get a great job in New York, and New York didn't think so. So they weren't all that impressed by my work in Chicago. I don't know why. They should have been, I think. But anyway, I ended up working at the World Trade Center the first year it was built, when it wasn't even finished yet. And working for Toyota, interestingly enough, when it was a trading company, and working in their accounting department, because I was the only person that passed the math test, which was addition and subtraction. So it wasn't really too hard to get the job. But they sent me to NYU night school to take accounting courses, which I didn't do really that well in, but while I was there, I found a screenwriting course. And of course, my major in college had been lit, and I'd always wanted to be a writer, so I thought, this will be fun, I'll take a screenwriting course. And out of that, I got an agent and sold my first screenplay, which took me to Hollywood with a 3-picture deal, which never really materialized, but I did live on option money for 4 years, which was great. But I say that and it sounds like it's a lot, but I think my apartment cost $200 a month. And when it was gone, I had to get a straight job, quote straight job. So I ended up working at the old Desilu Studios, which had turned into Soundstage Rentals. It's where they filmed Golden Girls eventually, but at this time they were doing MTV rock videos. MTV had just started, so that gives you an idea of how old I am. And they did Madonna's Material Girl and Michael Jackson. Motley Crue came and trashed the place and then left. And then, and I had an office that was between Walter Lantz, who created Woody Woodpecker, and Marilyn Chambers, the porn star. So it was really a great place to work. It really was great fun. And someday I think I'll write a book about it called the center of television, because that's what the studio was called at the time. But not yet. I need a little more perspective. But anyway, I thought, well, I'm going to be a famous screenwriter. This will be so much fun. And I studied with Bob McKee, got into a development class. He's the man who wrote Story. I don't know if you know who he is, but it was we considered it a good thing to be in his classes. And eventually, I didn't finish anything. I started 3 scripts and never finished them. And I think part of the reason was the first script I had written was about New England, which is what I know. But being out in LA and trying to write more edgy kind of, cool stuff was not my forte. And so I didn't really finish. I think the script I was working on at the time I quit was called Sluts. So that could be another idea of what I thought was good for me to write. Anyway, it wasn't, I didn't finish it, maybe thank goodness. But we were there for 15 years. I met my husband out there. And when we came back, every year we'd come back in the summer and think, oh, we're moving back. He's from New Jersey, so we're East Coast people. And then every winter we'd come back again to visit and say, maybe next year is awfully cold. So this went on for 15 years. And then we finally, one day, we got a call from my dad, who had just recently been diagnosed with Parkinson's. And he said, if you're coming back, come now. And we did. We were back here within just a few months. And the first night back, I had a dream that was what led to the story of The Lace Reader. It kind of inspired the story. And started writing, and I haven't stopped since. And The Lace Reader was, as you heard, has been published in 30 languages, and which has taken us to Europe a couple times, and it's been a lot of fun. And it's going to be a film. We finally have a director, which I can announce, whose name is Heather Dahlia, who's Brazilian, and won some award in Cannes last year, and he's great. So we'll be filming next summer, I guess. So talk about full circle, huh? Anyway, but there's something to growing where you're planted, I think. And for me, that's certainly been true. I mention all this because this book is about the maps that we create for our lives and how sometimes they fail us and we have to turn and take a different course. And I think it happens to everyone along the way, sometimes more than once. Certainly coming back here was changing the map I had worked out for myself. In the case of this book, though, Z Finch, the psychotherapist, is really has to very quickly make a decision when her patient dies, and she feels as if she caused the death of her patient, so that sends her into quite a turmoil and a tailspin. She decides to rip up the map of her life as she knows it. She's engaged to a wonderful man from Boston who everybody would love to be engaged to. Everything's going incredibly well. She has a practice that she was brought in by her mentor, Dr. Liz Mattei, who's quite a famous psychiatrist, and has been given a patient list that, would have taken her years to develop, and she walks away from all of it. And she walks away because of the death of a patient. And comes home to take care of her dad. Actually, she comes home just to visit her dad for a few minutes, because she hasn't seen him for a couple months. And what she finds when she walks into his house is, actually before she walks into his house, is that her dad has Parkinson's, so there's a bit from my life. But it's much farther along than she thought. And it's rather advanced Parkinson's with a Alzheimer's crossover, which happens in late-stage Parkinson's and happened to my own father. So quite a bit of this is from my life, as you'll see if you read it. The setting is Salem and Marblehead and Boston, a bit of Boston, before she leaves, and the North Shore. It's not a sequel to The Lace Reader at all, but there are, if you have read The Lace Reader, there are a few characters who wander through the narrative. Anne Chase, who is the town witch, and one of my favorite characters. I see nodding back there, that's good. I couldn't leave her out because it's hard to write a book about Salem without including that community in some way. And she is the aunt of Z, the main character. Not really her aunt, her mother's best friend, and she calls her auntie. And so she's in the book. Other than that, you'll see Rafferty walk through, and you see a couple other characters wander through, but it's not in any way a sequel. It's a completely different story. I want to read you the prologue so you'll get a little more of this, and then I'll explain in more detail.